Since childhood, Luke and I had been thick as thieves, growing up in the same apartment building in our bustling Chicago neighborhood. We'd race scooters down the hallways, sneak into rooftop barbecues, and binge-watch old sitcoms in his cozy living room until dawn. His place always felt like a sanctuary, thanks to his aunt, Ms. Thompson, who had raised him after his parents passed in a car accident when he was just a kid. She was the building's heart, warm, witty, never judgmental, always with homemade chocolate chip cookies or a steaming pot of chili. As we hit our teens, she stayed effortlessly vibrant, her auburn hair often tied back in a ponytail, her green eyes sparkling with a subtle mischief. She was grounded, a constant anchor in the whirlwind of our adolescent lives. Luke was the creative one between us. I had my smarts, always buried in books or tinkering with gadgets, but he possessed an imagination I envied. When he landed a prestigious art internship out in California, I was thrilled for him, yet my chest tightened at the thought of the miles between us. The days leading up to his departure, I helped him and Ms. Thompson sort through his sketchbooks and paints. She beamed with pride, her laugh lines crinkling, but there was a subtle melancholy in her eyes, like she was bracing for the quiet that would follow. On his last night, the three of us kicked back on the balcony, munching on deep dish pizza under the city lights, half listening to a classic rock playlist blasting from his old speakers. Ms. Thompson, sipping her chamomile tea, looked more delicate than usual, her usual energy softened by the impending solitude. As Luke boarded his flight at O'Hare, I hugged him tight, promising to text every day. He grinned, punching my shoulder lightly. "Keep an eye on Aunt Clara for me, okay? She'll act like she's fine, but she'll miss the noise." I laughed it off, assuring him I'd stop by. A few evenings later, Ms. Thompson texted, "Made too much lasagna. Want to come up?" I headed upstairs, expecting the familiar warmth, but the apartment felt different, quieter, without Luke's loud laughs and his posters cluttering the walls. She greeted me with a soft smile, wearing a comfy sweater, saying, "It's weirdly empty, isn't it?" We ate at the kitchen island, her with a glass of red wine, me with soda, talking about Luke's first updates from the West Coast, then shifting to my college classes, my ambitions, and even my awkward attempts at dating. She listened with that warm smile as I joked about bad blind dates, her presence filling the room with a gentle comfort. As I left, she added, "Drop by any time. Your company would be great." Her eyes held mine a second longer, stirring something deep inside me I couldn't quite name. That was the spark. I started popping in more often, sometimes to lend a hand with little things like hanging pictures or fixing a squeaky door hinge, stuff I picked up from my dad back home. Other times, it was just to chat over coffee. The apartment still smelled like fresh-baked goods and spices from her herb garden on the windowsill, but with Luke gone, there was this intimate hush that made every conversation feel more personal. One muggy summer evening, after we cleared out the hall closet together, we collapsed on the couch with iced lemonade, wiping sweat from our faces. She shared stories about how Luke always looked up to my confidence, her voice tinged with that fond ache. "The quiet gets to you after a while," she admitted, staring out at the glittering skyline over Lake Michigan. Her texts started coming more frequently. Funny memes about city life, old photos of Luke as a kid with captions that made me chuckle. They were casual, but each one sent a little thrill through me, like the start of something unspoken. One weekend, she suggested we try a new recipe she'd clipped from a magazine, a hearty seafood chowder, perfect for the cooling weather. I blew off plans with my buddies from school, drawn by her easy invitation. She opened the door in a simple sundress that accentuated her graceful figure, her hair loose around her shoulders for once, and we talked like old friends about favorite books, hidden dreams, and the little regrets that pile up over time. Her laugh was rich and melodic, lingering in my ears long after. When she reached over to fix my collar, her fingers brushed my neck, sending a warm spark down my spine. "You've grown into quite the young man," she said softly, her tone laced with genuine admiration. I fumbled for words, mumbling about my upcoming exams, but the air between us crackled with an undercurrent I couldn't ignore. As the leaves started turning gold and red along Michigan Avenue, the evenings got chillier, carrying that crisp autumn bite. She texted about whipping up a pot of her famous beef stew, and I showed up to find the lights turned low, the table set with flickering candles that cast a soft glow on the walls. She looked radiant in a cozy blouse, her smile welcoming and tender as she dished out bowls. We ate slowly, sharing stories from our days. Hers about her job at the local library, mine about campus life. And for the first time, she poured me a small glass of her red wine, our glasses clinking in a quiet toast. The room felt alive with closeness, like the world outside had faded away. Midway through dinner, she set down her spoon, her eyes locking onto mine with a vulnerability that made my heart skip. "You're more than just a friend dropping by now," she murmured, her voice barely above a whisper. She stood and walked to the window, silhouetted against the twinkling city lights, her presence pulling me like gravity. "Stay a bit longer?" she asked, turning back with her hand extended. I nodded, taking it, feeling the warmth of her palm against mine. We moved to the living room, where she traced light patterns on my hand, confessing, "I've felt invisible for so long, you know. Like life just passes by." The pull was irresistible, a mix of comfort and something deeper, more electric. That night unfolded with a gentle intensity I'd never known, tender touches, whispered words of affection, and shared breaths that felt like home. Afterward, we lay tangled in each other's arms on the couch, her head resting on my shoulder, no need for words in the peaceful afterglow. But as I stepped out into the cool night air, reality crashed in like a wave, bringing a pang of guilt that twisted in my gut. What would Luke think? In the days that followed, her texts came. "You okay? Everything all right?" I was torn, my feelings for her real but complicated. We met for coffee at a neutral spot downtown, away from the apartment's intimacy. "I don't regret it," she said firmly, stirring her latte. "But Luke, he'd be heartbroken if he knew." I nodded, the weight of it settling between us like fog. Our visits tapered off, not because the spark faded, but out of a shared caution to protect what we had with him. Months later, Luke and I still talk regularly. He's clueless about it all. Ms. Thompson and I exchange occasional messages, quick hellos, updates on life. In that brief, stolen time, we found a real connection, two lonely souls reaching for warmth in the cold. It's a secret I'll carry forever, a heartfelt chapter etched in my heart. As the weeks slipped by, Chicago's autumn deepened, painting the city in fiery hues of orange and crimson. I threw myself into my studies at DePaul, burying my conflicted feelings in textbooks and late-night study sessions at the library. But Clara, Ms. Thompson, lingered in my thoughts like a song stuck on repeat. Her warm laugh, the way her eyes crinkled when she smiled, the soft brush of her hand. It all haunted me in the quiet moments. I'd walk past our old apartment building on my way to class, glancing up at her window on the 5th floor, half expecting to see her silhouette against the curtains. Sometimes I'd catch myself rereading her old texts, those little snippets of humor and warmth that still made my chest tighten. One chilly November evening, I was grabbing a burger at a diner near campus when my phone buzzed. It was Clara. "Found an old photo of you and Luke at the lakefront. Made me smile. Coffee tomorrow?" My thumb hovered over the keyboard, torn between caution and the pull of her invitation. I typed back, "Sure, sounds good." Noon at the Bean? Meeting at Millennium Park felt safer, public, less likely to stir up the intimacy we'd stepped back from. When I arrived, she was already there, bundled in a navy coat, her auburn hair catching the sunlight as she stood by the Cloud Gate sculpture, its curves reflecting the skyline. She waved me over, her smile as warm as ever but tinged with something cautious, like she was feeling out the boundaries too. We grabbed coffee from a nearby cart and sat on a bench, the park bustling with tourists snapping photos. She pulled out the photo from her purse, a faded snapshot of me and Luke, maybe 12 years old, grinning with ice cream cones by Lake Michigan. You two were trouble, she teased, her voice light but her eyes searching mine. We talked about safe things, Luke's latest sketches from California, her new book club at the library, but the air between us hummed with unspoken words. When a cold breeze swept through, she shivered, and I instinctively offered my scarf. She hesitated, then took it, wrapping it around her neck with a soft, "Thanks, Ethan." Her fingers lingered on the wool, and for a moment, I swear I felt that same spark from months ago. After that, we fell into a careful rhythm. Coffee meetups became a semi-regular thing, always in public places, cafes, parks, once even the Art Institute, where we wandered through galleries joking about the abstract pieces Luke would love. Each time, I felt the pull to be closer, to let the conversation drift to that night. But I held back. So did she. Yet there were moments, her hand brushing mine as we reached for the same exhibit pamphlet, or the way she'd laugh and nudge my arm. That made it clear the connection hadn't faded. It was like we were dancing around the edges of something we both wanted but couldn't name. One Saturday in early December, she texted about a Christmas market in Daly Plaza. Feel like checking it out? I could use some holiday cheer. I agreed, and we met under the giant Picasso sculpture, the square alive with twinkling lights, vendors selling hot cocoa, and kids skating nearby. Clara looked radiant, her cheeks pink from the cold, a festive red scarf around her neck. We strolled through the stalls, sampling gingerbread and admiring handmade ornaments. At one point, she stopped to buy a tiny painted snowflake, saying, "This'll look perfect on my tree." She turned to me, her eyes soft. "You should come see it sometime. The apartment's all decked out now." The invitation hung there, tempting, but I just smiled and said, "Maybe I will." We both knew it was a line we weren't ready to cross. As we sipped cocoa by a fire pit, she grew quiet, staring into the flames. "You ever feel like life's moving too fast?" she asked suddenly. "Like you're trying to hold on to something, but it keeps slipping away?" I nodded, thinking of her, of Luke, of the way time seemed to pull us in different directions. "Yeah," I said, "but sometimes the things that matter stick around, even if they change." She looked at me then, her eyes glistening, not with tears, but with something raw and real. "You're wise for a college kid," she said, a small smile breaking through. We stood there, the market's noise fading into the background, and for a moment, it was just us. Two people tethered by a shared history and a fleeting, beautiful mistake. The holidays crept up faster than I expected, blanketing Chicago in snow and festive lights that twinkled along Michigan Avenue like stars brought down to earth. I spent Thanksgiving with my family, the usual chaos of turkey and football games, but my mind wandered to Clara, wondering if she was alone or if she'd joined friends. A quick text from her, "Happy Turkey Day, hope you're stuffed and happy," brought a smile, and I replied with a photo of my overflowing plate. It was innocuous, but it kept the thread between us alive. By mid-December, the city was a winter wonderland, with ice rinks popping up and carolers on street corners. One evening, after a grueling finals week, I got a call from her instead of a text. "Ethan," she said, her voice warm against the static, "I hate to ask, but my car's buried under this snow. Any chance you could help dig it out? I'll make it worth your while. Hot chocolate and cookies." I laughed, grabbing my shovel without a second thought. When I arrived at the building, she was waiting in the lobby, bundled up in a wool hat and gloves, looking every bit the picture of cozy winter charm. We trudged out to the parking lot, the snow crunching under our boots, and got to work. As we shoveled, laughing about my clumsy slips on the ice, the tension from our careful distance melted away. "You're a lifesaver," she said, brushing snow from my jacket. Her touch lingered, and in the glow of the streetlights, her eyes met mine with that familiar spark. Back upstairs, true to her word, she brewed hot chocolate spiked with peppermint, and we sat by the window watching flurries dance outside. The apartment smelled like cinnamon from the cookies cooling on the rack. Conversation flowed easily, about my exams, her holiday plans, but soon drifted to deeper waters. "Luke's coming home for Christmas," she mentioned casually, but her tone held a note of apprehension. "It'll be good to have him back, but things feel different now." I set down my mug, my heart pounding. "Clara," I started, using her first name for the first time without the M's. "About us. I don't want to pretend anymore." She looked at me, surprise flickering across her face, then softening into something tender. "Neither do I," she whispered. "We talked then, really talked, about the guilt, the fear of hurting Luke, but also the genuine connection we'd found." "Life's too short to ignore what feels right," she said, reaching for my hand. That night, we didn't cross any lines, but we shared a kiss by the doorway as I left, soft and full of promise, sealing a silent agreement to figure this out together. Christmas Eve arrived with a buzz of excitement. Luke flew in, and the three of us reunited for dinner at the apartment, just like old times. He regaled us with stories from California, his eyes lit up about his art projects. Clara and I played it cool, exchanging glances that held our secret. But later, after he crashed from jet lag, she and I stole a moment on the balcony, wrapped in blankets against the cold. "We have to tell him eventually," I said. She nodded, leaning into me. "When the time's right. For now, let's just enjoy this." The new year brought resolutions and a fresh start. Luke headed back west, none the wiser, and Clara and I began dating quietly. Dinners at hidden gems in Wrigleyville, walks along the frozen lakefront, stolen weekends exploring the suburbs. Our romance blossomed in the quiet spaces, heartfelt and real, built on years of knowing each other. She taught me to appreciate the little things like sunrise over the city, and I brought out her adventurous side, dragging her to comedy shows and street festivals. Months turned into a year, and as spring thawed the city once more, we decided it was time. Luke visited for his birthday, and over burgers at a rooftop spot, we broke the news. He stared, shocked at first, then burst out laughing. "You two? Seriously? That's actually kinda perfect." Relief washed over us, and his blessing turned our secret into something open and celebrated. Now, looking back, that chapter started with loss, but bloomed into love. Clara's my anchor, my partner in this crazy life. We've got our sanctuary in that old apartment, filled with laughter, art from Luke, and the warmth of a family pieced together. It's heartfelt, it's ours, and it's forever.